Since the entire universe is within the mind, the notions of bondage and liberation are also within it. Well, the entire universe is within the mind. But this is clearly true. Even from a scientific point of view, all sensory experience is created within the mind. The entire universe is within the mind. And if there was no awareness, that there would be no universe. I mean, you might think, this is the old story of, if there's a tree in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it, would there be a sound if it fell over? And the answer is no, because sound is an experience, and if there's no experience, then there's no sound. Likewise, the whole universe is an experience. If there's nobody there to experience it, there's no universe. We might create the hypothetical situation in our mind of a universe devoid of life, but that's just a hypothetical situation in our mind. Again, it's in our mind. But he's saying here, notions of bondage and liberation are also within it. And there's a slightly suspicious angle creeping in here. At the end of chapter 96, there was a sentence which I said was open to various interpretations. It says, when it thinks I am bound, there is bondage. When it thinks I am free, there is freedom. And there's a possibility here that the Yoga Vasistha is suggesting that if you believe that you are liberated, then you are liberated. And or that if you meditate on liberation, you'll become liberated. This is not something which makes any sense whatsoever, because bondage and liberation, they are beliefs, and so all notions of bondage and liberation must be given up. We must let go of them. Anyway, in this connection there is the following legend which I heard from the creator Brahma himself. Listen to it attentively. There was a great forest, so large that millions of square miles were like the space within an atom in it. Okay, there's a great forest. I'm not sure, there might be a little grammatical error here, or a misprint. But millions of square miles were like the space within an atom. That's a peculiar simile, isn't it? But the atom here normally refers to the atom of consciousness, which we know is infinite. In it, there was just one person who had 1,000 arms and limbs. He was forever restless. He had a mace in his hand, with which he beat himself, and, afraid of the beating, he ran away in panic. He fell into a blind well. He came out of it, again beat himself, and again ran away in panic, this time into a forest. He came out of it, again beat himself, and again ran away in panic, this time into a banana grove. Though there was no other being to fear, he wept and cried aloud in fear. He kept running as before, beating himself as before. I witnessed all this intuitively, and with the power of my will, I restrained him for a moment. I asked him, "Who are you?" But he was so distressed and called me his enemy, and wept aloud, and then laughed aloud. Then he began to abandon his body, limb by limb. Immediately after this I saw another person, running like the first one, beating himself, weeping and wailing. When I similarly restrained him, he began to abuse me, and ran away, intent on his own way of life. Like this I came across several persons. Some listened to my words and abandoning their previous way of life became enlightened. Some others ignored me, or even held me in contempt. Some others even refused to come out of the blind well or the dense forest. Such is a great forest, O Ram. No one finds a sure resting place in it, whatever the mode of life they may adopt. Even today you see such people in this world, and you yourself have seen such a life of ignorance and delusion. Because you are young and ignorant, you do not understand it. And she doesn't understand why people should live this way. Okay, well, the analogy is quite obvious, but I'm going to get it explained for us in detail in the next chapter. Vasistha continued, O Ram, this great forest is not far away, nor is that strange man in a strange land. This world itself is the forest. It is a great void, but this void is seen only in the light of inquiry. It's a great void in the sense that there's nothing real in it. This light of inquiry is the I in the parable. It's I in the sense of self. This wisdom is accepted by some and rejected by others who continue to suffer. They who accept it are enlightened. The person with thousands of arms is the mind with countless manifestations. This mind punishes itself by its own latent tendencies and restlessly wanders in this world. The blind well in the story is hell, and the banana grove is heaven. The dense forest of thorny bush is the life of a worldly man, with the numerous thorns of wife, children, wealth, etc., hurting him all the time. The mind now wanders into hell, now into heaven, and now into the world of human beings. Even when the light of wisdom shines in the life of the deluded mind, it foolishly rejects it, considering that wisdom is its enemy. Then it weeps and wails in distress. Sometimes it experiences an imperfect awakening, and it renounces the pleasure of the world without proper understanding. Such renunciation itself proves to be a great source of sorrow. But when such renunciation arrives out of the fullness of understanding, of wisdom born of inquiry into the nature of the mind, the renunciation leads to supreme bliss. That's an important point. People often look to spiritual understanding because they're miserable with life. But unless you've actually had some insight, in fact, unless you've touched liberation already, then you're going to just have more pain. Such a mind may even look at its own past notions of pleasure with puzzlement. Just as the limbs of the person as they were cut away fell down and disappeared, the latent tendencies of the person who wisely renounces the world also vanish from the mind. Behold the play of ignorance, which makes one hurt oneself out of one's own volition, and which makes one run hither and thither in meaningless panic. The phrase running around like headless chickens comes to mind. Though the light of self-knowledge shines in every heart, yet one wanders in this world driven by one's own latent desires, and the mind itself intensifies this sorrow and goads one to go round in circles. By its own whims and fancies, thoughts and hopes, it binds itself. When it is visited by sorrow, it despairs and becomes restless. When one who gains wisdom preserves it for a long time and persists in the practice of inquiry, he does not experience sorrow. An uncontrolled mind is a source of sorrow. When it is thoroughly understood, the sorrow vanishes like mist at sunrise. So this is again emphasizing the point that I made before, that liberation is a practice. When one who gains wisdom preserves it for a long time and persists in the practice of inquiry. So you gain that wisdom, you gain that insight. This is when the attention focuses on itself. That's the ultimate. That's the mountaintop. And we have to, once that mountaintop has been reached, we have to keep coming back to it over and over again. That is spiritual practice.